टीवी चैनल हो, जो चाहे बोले, जब चाहे बोले। पहले ऐसा था ही नहीं, बड़ी मुश्किल से एक दूरदर्शन के पास होता था, और हम लोग इग्नोयू में इतने इम्पोर्टेंट थे बिकॉज हमारे पास टीवी चैनल था और लिंक था। So it is your show. You decide how you conduct it, what you will do.
I think now we can start the meeting. So, what was wonderful was while all this is going on one hand, we are talking about self-learning and self dispositions of a learner and why it is critical to be a self-learner. I was just today I was kind of meeting. I met somebody who. While we were talking, this gentleman was so primitive suddenly, sir, and I think this is all because of you and your very exciting discussions that we have every table talk. He was talking to me, he was talking about education, but in a way it was so funny because I felt he was so primitive. He's asking very basic questions, and he said, it's so important. People should understand why these basic definitions and basic understandings. And he was absolutely warped about what he was talking, totally confused. And I was just wondering that if this is what is going to happen with the people who are sitting on chair and are trying to direct, other people, then where are we leading our children to? So it was absolutely I mean I wanted to laugh. At the same time I was sad, and I was wondering that now there's also time when people should start thinking about self-learning. And sir, it's surprisingly my self-learning journey is still on, though I am having a lot of hiccups in it. It is sometimes very frustrating when you don't get those little computer terms and how to use them and what to put or what not to put. But anyhow, it is just going on very interesting. So I think today's session might teach me even more as to how I should go about, working.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. And it is wonderful again to have so many people back here on the table talk every Saturday. I think this schedule of Saturday is something that we are all looking forward to. At least I always look forward to listening to Professor Pant, because then suddenly there are so many new aspects, there are so many new dimensions which join in, and then you can look at the same thing that you're doing every day. Maybe you have a different perspective to look at it, you have a different enthusiasm to see and to work upon it. So thank you so much for that, sir. And for all those, I see a lot many new people today, and I'm so happy to welcome Miss Preeta Pant Vyas here, who has been here in ONGC with us, and we had such a lovely time together when she was here. And now connecting with you is wonderful. Same, I also see Dr. Anjan Ray here. Sir, it is amazing and it is so good that you are here. Good evening, Director of Indian Institute of Petroleum, and an amazingly uh, person who's connected to so many things, from wildlife to core research to doing newer things, and also connecting and sharing it with people. So many other scientists were so controlled about their scientific research. I think Dr. Ray is one of those who would love to share his research and what he does in his organization with people, including students, because we happen to discuss so many things that they do, and of course we're planning to take our students to their institute and show how they're working with plastic and trying to convert it to oil. So it is wonderful, and so all those I also think that Professor Jasola is here. Welcome. Good evening, sir. It's wonderful and nice to see you here. So many people here, and just for a little introduction, because nothing starts without an introduction. So many of you know Professor Pant by now, but all those who joined for the first time or don't really know about him, he's one of those revolutionary teacher, learner, educator, and a lifelong learner, I would say, who's always into learning and enthusiasm, learning and newer forms of learning to other people, starting his journey from Allahabad University and moving on to doing his PhD from now IIT Roorkee, and that too in a topic like computational physics, which must have been really revolutionary at the time when he did it. He has always been learning, and he's always been devising these newer skills to learn. And possibly that was very rightly why he was there in IGNOU, because he talked about distance learning, and now he sees that there is no barriers to learning. And probably reaching to a point where he's talking about self-learning, which is extremely motivating. So, sir, I will not take too much of time. And today, sir is going to discuss with us on certain aspects of self-learning. So, please.
Yeah. So, thank you, Rima, for this introduction. I do see a few new people, because clearly Preeta I'm seeing here for the first time. And so what I'll do is I'll begin with putting this story together, because if you just look at this session, it doesn't give you a full picture of what we are talking about. So in these talks for the time being, we've been looking at preparing people for what's coming. And in my own, this series of talks, I spoke about the scientific temper. That's a topic which is very sort of, close to my heart. And all of you know that Jawaharlal Nehru talked about scientific temper in his discovery of India in 1946. I don't know of any other world leader, Churchill, Abraham Lincoln, ever talking about the importance of the scientific temper. Though the countries might have made a lot of scientific progress, but scientific temper is something which all citizens should have, was never spoken. Interestingly, when we got independence, Jawaharlal Nehru became absolutely quiet on this. He did not make any public utterance about science and promoting science and so on. The constitution was done in 50-51. Not a word in the original draft of the constitution of everybody's duty to have a scientific temper or whatever. It's only 1976 that by a constitutional amendment, they put in that Article 51A(h) about scientific temper, but still, it is not really being practiced. And I'd always wondered why this would have happened. Of course, I've now got a bit of my own interpretation. I think he saw Mahatma Gandhi being killed and realized that if I take science, I will be just made into keema mutton, and there will be no chance for him. And so scientific. But today's problems, and more importantly, their solutions, are going to be based on scientific approaches. And scientific approaches and action by everybody. And now we are talking about global issues like climate change. Till the first things of climate change murmurs came, and Al Gore talked about an inconvenient truth, etc. Nobody, but today, now the latest report, IPCC 6 report, clearly says there is absolutely no confusion about the climate change. And just now I saw a report somewhere right or wrong that in Bombay, the entire Nariman Point will go back into the sea in a certain amount of time, say 30 years from now or whatever. So this is very important in that. And then when we started looking at this, I came, and my background has been that I've been in a proper teaching institution, IIT Kanpur, then Indira Gandhi National Open University, which is more distance learning. And I've come to the conclusion there is no option to self-learning for progress. And the reason is very simple. Much of education of the past was that you also knew what other people knew. So what your uncle knew, what your father knew, what your this thing knew, you've also learned. But today it is no longer useful to know what your uncle learned or what your uncle knew and what your uncle did a great job in it. It is for you to look at new challenges which are coming every day. And like Rima said, there are new things. Now, if you just get away from all this science, you know that latest news item somewhere on, if you see in shorts or something, is a 12-year boy from UK has made £1 million by creating something called NFT, non-fungible token. So you may be in the field of IT, you may have heard of blockchain and Ethereum, but you may still not have heard of non-fungible tokens. You can't wait for AICT to make a course on non-fungible tokens and tell you, or UGC to make a 1-credit course on non-fungible tokens to tell you, you have to start learning it yourself. And this is why we have done this not as a short thing, but as 4 sessions. So the very first session last week was about the criticality of self-learning. Today, I'm talking about or drawing attention to dispositions of a self-learner. Next week, we are going to talking about strategies and skills and tools for self-learners. And finally, we'll talk about how technology helps a self-learner today. Now, this is very important because in education, we never look at the behavioral part. It is very interesting. Education is about behavioral change. We expect an educated person to have a very different behavioral approach to whatever problems or challenges he faces, and in particular, the scientific approach. But we have somehow seen putting of this content, and that also for those of you who are in education, at the lowest level of Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's taxonomy begins with remembering, applying, understanding, moves up to analysis and creation. So the goal of education today has to be able to do new things on the basis of what you learned. Whereas our examination system so far is saying that, can you write what is in the book without looking at the book? Now, this has been my favorite descriptor of this thing. And once it was very interesting. Once I was in Lucknow, and there was a professor of IIM Lucknow sitting in the audience. So when I said the exam system today says, can you write what is in the book without looking at the book? He really had a great laugh. And IIM Lucknow professor, he said, I give a course on oral communication, but I have to give a written test on that oral communication because that is what the university says. So this is the kind of a thing. Whereas what we are talking of is now creation and production. You know all this, so what can you do with it? And this is where what I want to talk today about is not so much of information, but about the dispositions. And of all places, I want to take you to the very famous book, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Successful People. Now, when we see that, we said, no, this has nothing to do with us. This is maybe for management people, this people, that people. But recall the phrase, successful people. And when we're talking of learning, learning is also something challenging. Like Rima herself said, when she's trying to learn, there are so many challenges coming. Now, if you want to overcome a challenge and be successful, you must have a disposition for being able to do that. It is not enough like our normal thing, ratta lagate raho until you can memorize it and so on. But that is not going to lead to any understanding. And educationists know that. That's why they use Bloom's taxonomy and they know that. So if you look to the 7 habits which Covey has said, and it is easily referenceable, this thing. The first is proactive. This is very interesting. This is very interesting because in my so many years, it is very difficult to find a proactive learner. I have often said to people, what is it that you would want to learn? So if you had 5 hours of time, non-mandated, what would you want to learn? And you won't believe people are not able to answer that question. What would you want to learn if you could learn anything and you had 5 hours? Now, we are all saying that we will want to be taught. So somebody describes what we should learn. So he may decide, and then we may fight that this is being done in history and so on. But nowhere in the entire education of an average person or typical person is he or she given the choice to express what that person wants to learn. That person may get a choice between elective papers. You must say this paper is elective, that paper is elective, but nowhere are you actually given the choice. Not only that, curricula is frozen in time. I had a problem when I was in Indira Gandhi University and I was running my MCA program. Initially, we created a 3-year curriculum. And then in 2 years' time, I wanted to revise some of the course because, as you can see, I'm usually up to date. And the people in the academic council said, no, your first batch has not come. How can you revise? And I said, but the topics have changed. The field has changed. I have to put in something. So anyway, with great difficulty, I got something done. Then I became more clever. So I put up a paper itself called Emerging Topics in the Field. So that way I could put in everything without changing the title of the paper. So proactive is very important. Our former Director General of CSIR, Mashalkar, actually has a book on this. He has a book called From Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting. So he says leapfrogging is reactive. So when a frog sees something dangerous like a snake or something, it makes a big jump and jumps, try to save himself, etc. But pole vaulting is a prepared, planned activity. And this is what he says. So this is one of the first things that when we talk about learning, and in self-learning this becomes, because there is some desire from you to want to learn something. Then it says begin with the end in mind. This is another very interesting. You ask people, why are you learning this? They will say, because it is prescribed in the syllabus. But what would you do with it? Absolutely no idea. It happens in school. In school, why are you learning Pythagoras theorem? If you don't know Pythagoras theorem while you were in class 8, what do you miss out in life? Why must you know that sine squared theta plus cos squared theta is equal to 1? If you don't know this, what do you miss out in life? And if you know something, what is it that you've gained that others don't know? So I asked once, I was doing a program with a set of people who were botany teachers in university. And I asked, so what is it that a person who knows botany knows that somebody who's not studied botany doesn't know and is missing out in his life and so on? Absolutely no idea. But in self-learning, this will happen because you will be motivated by something. So you will see that I want to learn this so that I can do this. Like just now I said, you might want to learn how to make a non-fungible token. So you can make a non-fungible token about the recording that you do or a song that you sing or something else. So this is what you can say end in mind. And therefore, every strategy or path will become a personalized path. First things first. The very simple thing, but first things first. But you won't believe in education, this doesn't happen. I've been involved in it in the last few years. Suddenly AI has become very interesting. So in fact, one day I got a call. Sir, आप machine learning सिखाते हैं? मैंने कहा हाँ सिखा तो देंगे, लेकिन तुमको y is equal to mx plus c आता है? No. CBSE, in the school curriculum, they put AI, data science, this, that, design thinking, whatever word they have heard in the market, they put it in the syllabus. And what is very interesting is that they have no idea what it means, how it is used. They go to some Microsoft and somebody else and this thing and create some curriculum, put it there. Interestingly, all people who have some idea of the NCERT curriculum because of their children or nephews or nieces or so on, in classes 9, 10th, 11th, 12th, the NCERT mathematics book has Appendix 2 called Mathematical Modeling. Appendix 1 is proof, etc., etc. This has been there for quite some time, but no teacher teaches it, no student learns it. They want to learn artificial intelligence, they want to learn machine learning, but mathematical modeling, which is already given there, they don't touch because it is not asked the CBSE exam or probably also in the IIT entrance exam. So this is a very important aspect, that if your foundations are not strong and if your basics are not clear, so all that you can do is you memorize everything. And that is a okay thing, but doesn't help to. Then there's a thing broadly over here about think win-win, which is more in terms of negotiation, but here is between teacher-learner kind of a situation. Then there's a very interesting thing called seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is a very important thing. So if you're talking about learning, and in fact, it's for self-learning, this is a very important thing. The test of self-learning is seek to understand and then be understood if you're trying to explain that to another person. And this is something which many important people, including people like Einstein, have said. If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then you don't really understand it. And Richard Feynman says the same kind of thing. I'll be talking about Richard Feynman technique at some length in my next session. But the important point is, do you really understand? Or do you just say it's a set of complicated jargon, which I don't understand and you will not understand, but you must memorize and so on. And then it talks about synergize. Now, in this case, it has a certain meaning, but in our case, this synergy is between the various subjects that we see. We learn subjects in silos. So we talk about physics, chemistry, maths, biology, etc., but there is no linkage between them. And so it is very interesting. The people who study biology, they will study in botany, I think, gymnosperms and angiosperms. In zoology, they will study vertebrate and invertebrate, and so on and so forth. But what is happening? They're studying chemistry also, they're studying physics. But when it comes to, say, functionality of something, they have no idea. When it comes to a mathematical model for something, they have no idea. And you have seen that in this pandemic, even the whole country is not able to make a proper model which you can rely on and in some sense depend upon. Because everything is in silo. The people who know biology have no idea of maths. People who know maths have no idea of biology. People who know physics don't know chemistry. But synergize is because the world comes to you as one. The world that I'm experiencing is just one world. It does not come divided into sociology, anthropology, psychology, physics, chemistry, maths, and within that certain specializations and so on. But when you start on a self-learning endeavor, then you will have to kind of look at things and also look at whatever is coming with it. And you may want to see the behavior aspects of it or some mathematical aspects or maybe the chemistry behind it or the physics behind it and so on and so forth. So this again becomes very important. And finally, it says sharpen the saw. And this again is something which is very interesting because what it means is your fundamentals should be good. And your fundamentals are physics, maths, abstraction, etc., etc. And there is this huge, mass, stupid rush of skill-based education. The worst thing that we can talk about and people are glorifying is skill-based education because they have no idea that these skills are very perishable skills. And especially with the advent of AI and machine learning and so many things which are done by humans will no longer be done by humans. In fact, I talk about this at length when I talk about AI system, but you have seen before yourself so many activities, professions, roles disappear. I like to begin some of these things by talking about the lift operator. So I was born and brought up in Allahabad. First time I saw the lift was in Bombay, Victoria Terminus Station. And there used to be a lift operator who would press a button and you would go up and down. And now you go hundreds of floors and there is no operator, there is nothing, and so on. The displacement is so fast. And I'm assuring you that within a reasonable time, maybe a decade or so, you will not see the entire, people are talking about the film industry collapsing or having difficulty with this COVID. The film industry will disappear as we know it because you don't need human actors anymore. I'm sharing this, remember this link and go to this link called thispersondoesnotexist.com. So the link is thispersondoesnotexist.com. You will see there photos which will look human-like, but is not a photograph of any human being. AI, through a technique called generative adversarial networks, has created this human-like looking thing. Now, if I can create, so first thing is the modeling industry is gone. So all those contests, etc., and hunting for a model and beginning your career as a model is gone, because models will all be digitally created. And there are short videos already where it is not humans, but entirely AI created characters who are doing all these kind of things. Now they've already made 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute movies. They can make it longer and this thing. So it's very important for people to understand that the lives of skills are very limited, and this whole movement towards trying to say that we will do this for skill, etc. So anyway, I just gave you this thing. The idea is that it is the human being now which becomes important. And the point is very simple. We are moving towards what is called a knowledge society, an innovation society, a creation society, whatever you want. And in terms of educationist Benjamin Bloom, we are now talking about the highest level of creativity thing. So just recalling what was already there in the book without looking at the book is no great feat. So I just mentioned Stephen Covey's very famous book, but I've collected from somewhere else traits of unsuccessful people, because they also have some common traits. The first common trait is that they are often unethical. They'll want to cheat, they'll want to do this, they do some other mischief, etc. This is one of my favorite stories. Harvard University found, to its utter surprise, that many of its alumni, distinguished alumni, were in jail. This happened by chance. This happened by chance because they were making a directory of alumni and everything was automated. So they gave a form and asked people to fill the form, which had your name, your hostel, which year you passed, what are your awards, what are your this thing, etc. So in this, one of the entries was Ted Krasinski. He's known as the Una Bomber. He said graduated this school, magna cum laude, whatever. And when he was awards, he said 17 years for this, 18 years for this. His current address was High Security Penitentiary, Colorado State, cell number such and so on. And they were totally shocked because this was all automated. It got into the directory. When they did research, they found lots of them were there. It's not just this thing. Many of you know the CEO of Enron is a Harvard alumni, was in jail. Our own Rajat Gupta, modern school, IIT Delhi, Harvard, then jail, 2 years jail, just came out and so on. So this is one of the very interesting phenomena. And then he talks about what it does. The other thing is that there are now two kinds of people. One who embrace the scarcity mindset, that everything is very rare and difficult and so on, which is, for example, our education system. Information is available for everybody on the internet, but UGC says only 20 people, 80 people, etc. can learn. They will learn from the same resources. But you have a scarcity mindset. You have this huge IIT. It's one of the most stupid things in the world. I mean, it's difficult to believe how intelligent human beings could be doing this. There are, let us say, 1.5 million people wanting to get an IIT education. They don't want to get it for free. They're willing to give you several lakhs a year for getting that education. The IIT says, no, we can't give it to all of you. We will give it only to a few thousand, and you go and give your money to Akash, Ganga, Patal, this, that, whatever, but we will give it only to a very few people. The knowledge they're going to give is publicly available all over for just going to the internet and asking for it. It's an amazing, hilarious, stupidity kind of a thing that we are keeping the scarcity mindset in a... Then they complain and blame others. So there will always be a kind of a thing, this is not that, that's whatever. They stop learning. They're quick to give up. One of the very important things about learning, and that's why I'm talking this whole session on that, is it is a challenge. It is not like eating a basic. People have thought of education as giving away laddus. So I will give you laddu, so many laddus, and I will make reservation for OBC. They will get so many laddu. SC/ST will get laddus, and they can eat the laddu. Learning is not eating laddus. Learning is something that you have to. Very often I use learning is a spectator sport. It is not a spectator sport. It is a participative sport. And this is what happened when the internet came. Internet became a means of broadcasting at low cost, easy cost. Therefore, OTT, etc. all came. But again, the problem is that learning is not broadcasting. If learning were broadcasting, then once printed books were available, everybody would have become a learned man. We all had access to Feynman lectures in physics when 50 years ago or whatever. But just information is not enough. And this is what the important point is, that eventually, and I mentioned Feynman, it is in that book that for the first time I read this, that he is doing all that, one of the best physicists, Nobel laureate, everything. And there I read a quotation. And the quotation was from, I think, Gibbons, who wrote Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. He says, for the power of instruction is completely futile, except in those fortuitous circumstances where it is superfluous, which means you cannot teach anybody. Robert Frost said the same thing. He said, I'm not a teacher, I'm an awakener. So the point we want to tell is that self-learning is the only way to educate a country like this. This cannot be done by a trickle-down controlled effect that I will open 5 IITs or 25 IITs, or I will open one more institute with 50 seats and 100 seats. That model is over. You have to have something where people will learn on their own. And this is how it has happened. I give the simple example of the mobile phone. Who taught us how to use the mobile phone? And in fact, very often I teach my IAS friends like that you missed a great opportunity. You would have a post called Director General of Mobile Phone Training. And then you would have Deputy Director Generals of Android Training and iOS Training. And then additional Director General. You would have asked us to come with an Aadhaar card, this, that, whatever, go to some mobile Shiksha Niketan and then get admission and then do a course. We all learned it by ourselves. Whoever knew told the other one, they told the other one. Sometimes grandparents learned it from their grandchildren and so on. Now, we've learned to use the mobile on our own. And what I am now trying to tell people in fair detail, now you use the mobile to learn. So first you learn to use the mobile. Now you use the mobile to learn. And I am very optimistic that on the 10th of September, when Reliance releases its new model, Geo Next, whatever, which will have a camera, which will have apps and this thing, and you can see YouTube, etc., you will be able to do that. So this is one of the other things that is very important, that we must look at practice. See, unfortunately, entire education system, nobody tells you this, that if you want to be in the knowledge society and you're going to be a knowledge worker, you have to practice knowledge acquisition and dealing with knowledge, not only once a year in the exam. So for example, if you look at an athlete, whether it is a championship or contest or not, that person is continuously training. You cannot see an athlete who is not training. If you look at a musician or a singer, he's always practicing. Whether there's a performance or not, whether there's a competition or not, he's continuously performance. And this is true of many other things. Artist is continuously painting, continuously keep on doing, and so on. It's only knowledge worker, for some funny reason, we said you have to learn seriously only for 14 days just before the exam every year. And no wonder you have people who will not be able to compete in the coming knowledge era. What you need is to be a continuous practitioner of quote unquote knowledge work. That means acquiring knowledge, disseminating knowledge, processing knowledge, transforming knowledge, and so on a regular basis. And just like we talk of physical muscles, we are talking of cognitive muscles, to use an analogy and a metaphor, and you must continuously do that. Otherwise, the biological principle of use it or lose it will there. So you will have huge brains, biological brains, but you will be incapable of doing anything, just like there are birds which have wings but can't fly. So, you know, the ostrich, the dodo, and so on, they are birds, they have wings, but they can't fly. So you'll all have brains, but you won't be able to use them, because to use them, you have to continuously build those things. And Guy Claxton calls it learning power. So just a couple of things before I pause for your reactions and comments. One very important thing is procrastination. We waste our times in so many things, our time in so many, I mean, I am not want to be against any particular thing, but in general, say you are using Netflix. If I ask you how much does Netflix cost you, you say, oh, it is just a couple of ₹100. No, but the hours that you're spending watching Netflix, you just look at that, and that is an opportunity cost for you because you could have been doing something better to improve yourself and so on. Same thing with procrastination. We tend to put off things. So you know you ought to do it, but you don't do it. And what has happened is that this knowledge economy has come suddenly upon us. As you know, standard, we say we were first in the manual labor economy, Bronze Age, Iron Age, Basic Age, etc., right up to the beginning of the agricultural age. But in the agricultural age, which also had a bit of skill about agriculture, etc., so you knew a bit of botany, but your main thing was still labor. In the industrial age, you started working in factories, where again the knowledge was very little. That's why our leaders talking skill-based, skill-based. You teach some skills so that he can do something in the factory. But today, what you need to do is actually higher order thing, creativity, putting things together from one to another, solve problems which are arising, solve problems which are yet to come. So that is another very important aspect. So you need to maintain some kind of discipline. Many people have talked about the importance of discipline. If you find this interesting, I want you to try being a bit creative. And there are two very interesting things. One is today's 20th August. 20th August is famous for Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream. That's a speech in 1963. You can Google it, YouTube it, and you can hear the speech, I Have a Dream. And he talks about dream in 1963 of equality in America between the blacks and the whites, and so on and so forth. Those of you who have that creative urge, I would request you to try writing something about, I have a dream for the future of education. What is your dream for the future of education, where every person can, quote unquote, rise to his potential or whatever, but I don't want to prompt you with that. I want you to think, what is your dream for education in the next 5-10 years? And to me, this is a good inspiring thing. Look at what Martin Luther King said. And if you want further inspiration, because Martin Luther King is more political, a similarly political one, Rabindranath Tagore has a very famous thing in Gitanjali 32, which is where the mind is without fear and the head is high. What I'm saying is, look at these two things and anything else that comes to your mind. Write 8 to 10 sentences as a prose, as a poem, as a Hindi kavita, whatever you feel like, to say, what is your dream for education in the future? And what I am saying is, we can then work towards realizing that dream. Our problem today is we don't even know what we want. We are into a moment of continuity, that this is what Lord Macaulay said, this is what after Macaulay some Kothari Commission said, some other thing said, etc. And we are just continuing that, including the new education policy, which is all complete bakwas, but it is being talked about every other day and so on. But I'm saying, forget that. That's for the national policy. What is your personal? What do you want as a philosophy for your children and grandchildren, for your nieces and nephews? What education do you want them to see? The point is very interesting. There's a thing you must have heard very often. Be very careful of what you imagine or dream, because your dreams are likely to come true. So dream of the education for the future. I'm not asking dream 300 years from now. Next 10 to 20 years. That is the point in which we will have a meaningful life. So next 10 to 20 years, what kind of an education do you dream of for your loved ones, children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, friends, etc., and so on and so forth? And then, of course, it is possible, because once we know what the goals are, I talked about Stephen Covey, we begin with the end in mind. You said the end is this, and this is what we want to work. Otherwise, what happens? We get distracted. with every other thing. Somebody will come up with strip learning, somebody will come up with this thing else, somebody will come up with this, somebody will say Finland method of education is very good. What is the harm? Apply your own mind, your own this thing, and do that. So I'll pause over here, and now we can have some discussion. People can make their comments, observations, questions, comments, and we'll carry this on for a while. Okay, Rima, over to you.
Thank you. It was indeed wonderful. I think Siddharth has been waiting for quite some time with his hand up, and I don't know what he has to ask. So, Siddharth, your question.
He's asking your permission to ask a question.
Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello. Just actually, my question was that, like in this time, like
Yeah.
government agencies like passport offices and railways, like why aren't they able to adapt with technologies? Like in the name of technology, they just have online booking systems or online download systems. Like, so why aren't they able to adapt with technology? Like, because I also, like, I went to the passport office the other day, and I
Yeah.
had all my original documents in DigiLocker, all the
Yeah.
original documents, but they
Yeah.
said they want to see the hard copy only,
Right.
not considering that, they were not considering DigiLocker as an option. So, and in railways also, you have to just carry your hard copy, but they don't accept
Yeah.
DigiLocker. So why why aren't they being able to adapt with this technology?
See, there is firstly there is a general reluctance to change, and in government systems, see it's a very simple thing. Where the consumer is king, they adopt technology, make it easier. So all private retail, etc., will make it easier and easier for you. You can do everything online. You can pay online. Everything will be done. Wherever government is concerned, government has a very serious issue of identity. I have also been to the passport office. In the passport office, you can distinguish two things. One, the part which TCS is doing, and the part which the government is doing. And the government is doing a different kind of thing. So answer is that this is against the government's personality, if you like. So government's personality is not, the government's personality is to say that they're doing a favor by giving you whatever document you want. Your own salary, they're giving a favor. Your own money in the bank, they think they're giving a favor. You try to get the PPF out of your account, get the PF out of your thing. So there is, it is, there are two attitudes. One can say that one can be benevolent. I am a harsh critic of the government, and therefore, as far as I'm concerned, but slowly the pressures will come upon them to do it. Okay.
Thank you.
The floor is open for everyone. Anybody who wishes to ask a question or feels would want to add something to the continuing discussion is welcome to add on.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
And, it was amazing, the discussion which is on, especially this blockchain and non-fungible tokens, and especially
this 12-year-old boy, 12-year-old boy from UK, he made £375,000 doing something. So this is the point.
And we say better late than never. So we also talking in terms of digital currency, and as they are saying, we're going to unravel the whole thing. See, again, as you said, governance learning part, especially government's learning part. See, I should not say it is kind of a procrastinated process, but it is indeed there because there is a lot of time lag. See, sir, the point, because I would like to have a comment from your side, because as this 21st century, this third millennium, and as we have witnessed, because with this fourth industrial revolution, and with Klaus Schwab talking about it, the kind of changes we will have, especially in education, and this, as you referred, Anthony Sheldon is talking about in his this fourth education revolution. the same thing. So is self-learning kind of a synonym to these two revolutions? Because self-learning revolution, again, it's a revolution. And especially in this COVID era and times, it has taught us, because self-learning has become a kind of a new norm. So is it synonym to this fourth industrial education, this fourth industrial revolution?
So I would say that what happens is that broadly the teacher-led education or teacher-controlled education, that era is over. It is now going to be local. So if you let me use a more technical vocabulary, the locus of control is with the learner now. It doesn't mean there's no teacher needed, but it's the learner who decides what he wants to learn, where he wants to learn it, from whom he wants to learn it, and so on and so forth. And therefore, all these learning resources have to be. See, it's like eating food. See, you have to eat food and digest it. When you are ill, then you are put in a hospital and drip is put and so on and so forth. So the school-based education is for the learning disabled who cannot do their own learning, and therefore they have to be done by somebody else. But a healthy adult, and a healthy means mentally okay, capable, cognitively capable, he should be able to do the cognitive processing on his own. Eventually, see, you and I agree, we are all information processors. Now, if you cannot process your own information, it means you are disabled and you need that much help for somebody else to do it for you. And one of the analogies I have is, if you look at animals, they eat the grass and they digest everything without any problem. They don't need to cook because they have 4 stomachs and there are 4 stages in which that food is digested. So you eat the food and you create a cud, then you chew the cud and so on. And those 4 stages are very similar to what IBM Watson does for its technology of collecting the knowledge, putting it in structure, putting the data, and so on. So eventually we have to become self-learners, not only of old knowledge, but what example I gave in the very first thing, that you learn new patterns which nobody else has seen before you. And that is why I'm relating it to the original story of scientific temper. See, what does the scientist do? What we call as he looks at new patterns which others didn't see in that existing data. So all of us, the learning process itself is one where we see something else which others haven't seen, which today is very interesting. Actually, it is the creative thing, the art people, the painting, the sculptor, the musician, who sees things which others have not seen. So our science education has no scope for creativity. We simply repeat what has been done hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago. I have said this very often in our teaching. When we teach science, it is with no creativity. But when you write an essay, there is some creativity. You can write your own thing. So how I spent my holidays. You write what you want, but in science, you have to say Pythagoras theorem or Boyle's law or Newton's law or something which was already there. So yes, you are right. Self-learning is the way to chart unknown territories.
So one follow-up, sir, small one. So are we talking about, because again, this self-learning mode, if it continues, so these educational institutions, are we talking about times maybe 10 years down the line, school-less, college-less system, and cloud universities, cloud institutions, self-learning, and one more thing, with CRISPR thing, because I'm going through this coding part. So are we talking about something 10 years down the line? Do we have something, I mean, very hypothetical, but mathematics, this thing, can we infuse in mathematics?
No, absolutely. So let me tell you very clearly and this thing. I am absolutely with this, and my next few years are on that. Now, I don't know whether you saw that, but I've just announced somewhere a course called AI for English. So I said, learn AI through AI. I mean, learn English through AI, because I was looking at AI applications and I saw most of the applications are taking away jobs of people. So I said, which application will actually empower them? So I said, learn English and use AI to learn English. And without an English teacher. So once it happened, I got a call from somebody. This is what he said, sir, आप हमको English सिखा देंगे, मैं आपको महीने महीने पैसा दे दूंगा. मैंने कहा देखो, मैं डायरेक्टली सिखाने का काम नहीं करता हूँ, लेकिन ये कैसे होता है, क्या होता है, इन चीजों में मेरा इंटरेस्ट है। तो मैं आपको एक ऐप बता देता हूँ जिसको आप लीजिए और करिए। कहते मैंने बिना टीचर के सीख लूंगा। सो पीपल आर एक्चुअली वेरी एक्साइटेड एट द आइडिया दैट बिना टीचर के सीख लेंगे। It is they have never believed that, because we have said बिन गुरु ज्ञान कहाँ से पाऊं, गुरु के बिना कुछ होगा नहीं। But the fact is you are learning. The guru is in your brain, your neurons, your hippocampus, that all connections are forming. So and also today already you Google this, there is something called Equal 42. Equal 42 is something which happened in Europe, is now in Silicon Valley, is happening in another place. It's a full-fledged software training institute with no teachers. Just Google it and so on. And students are being employed by all the major companies. Because
sorry, sir, this is Equal. This is Equal
42. ECOLE 42. Equal in French is like school. 42 is because that is the answer to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the question he asked about the world and so on. Google this, it's already done. A Code Academy is also almost like that. So you look at computer science, the English thing, I am starting that mission. And as soon as that English thing is done, I'm going to start maths. Learn maths yourself with the help of AI. So this, of course, I am anyway going to do. So this is already done. But the point is, even 10 years is too long. I don't think existing institutions can survive 10 years. The reason is that they are not trying to improve. You see, that coronavirus is mutating in 11 days. Our institutes are not moving. They're not even changing the syllabus. They're not doing this. No, when AICT, this report I read in the newspaper, when AICT said pick up new topics, only 11%, 12% of engineering colleges have picked up new topics. The rest have not even picked up these new subjects. Good, bad, indifferent. So the institution, it cannot change. See, the point is, it is very simple. We know this, that the rate at which large institutions evolve is too slow for current times. And there is absolutely no way that these things can evolve. Universities will remain as research universities. So they will be known for what frontiers they are pushing. So if there is a university which is doing CRISPR Cas9 and doing work on it, people will come to it to know about CRISPR Cas9. But the idea that somebody else has written it, I am going to tell you about it, that role is going to finish. See, you understand what I'm saying? So people will still go to universities and specialized centers where that knowledge frontier is being pushed. But where simply it is being broadcasted will disappear because there is no need of intermediary broadcaster. That's a simple thing. It has happened in so many other things. Now you're saying that the intermediary... See, one of the things about technology is that the intermediaries are getting displaced. So self-driving cars, what is happening? The driver is getting displaced. The car remains, but a person who is neither going nor there, why is he sitting there? The person who has to go has to sit there. The technology will be there. So similarly, the learner is there. The person who is providing the knowledge or pushing the frontiers of knowledge, they will be important. But the person who's intermediary is going to be there to the extent that provides some value. So it provides, it gives it in a different way, etc. That's why I said creativity becomes important. So for example, right now I said that take Martin Luther King's speech and Rabindranath Tagore's poem and create something as to what our education should be like. That will exist. But simply telling Martin Luther King's speech is already available. Press a button, do a search, you will get it. Getting Rabindranath Tagore's poem, so get it. So there is no value in just repeating Rabindranath Tagore's poem. That I am recited and I am telling you this is Rabindranath Tagore's poem. But I am saying, based on Rabindranath Tagore's poem, I have come up with this idea that let the self-learner in my country awake. So whatever that I'm trying to say, so this is going to be the important thing. And knowledge and learning will become very, very critical. So the importance of the teacher will be very high, but not the teacher who's a repeater of information, or the teacher who's a creator, who's a, let's say, like we said, sculptor or whatever, who deals with the information in a way. See, just look at one simple thing. Take data. You have a set of numbers. Today, there's a whole set of specialization called data visualization. How do you present the data so that it is easy to understand? When we were young, it was only simple graph you could plot, pie chart, woe chart. Now you can have infographics, you can have this, you can have that. That will be valuable. But simply telling the data is of no good because that is available. And more important is the insights from the data. See, this is where it is very interesting. So like, for example, we were not very good in it, but when artists see various paintings, they see various expressions of the painter in that painting. Whereas science was exactly something fixed, formula, same unit, same dimension, same equation. Now what will happen is that when you will present something, you present various versions, various possibilities, various things in it. So knowledge activity will continue. So the teacher will be more like, as I say, it is a cognitive fitness trainer. So he's getting you to be cognitively higher, right?
Yes.
See, like a physical fitness trainer is a cognitive. So, and this is what Socrates used to do. What did Socrates do? He will pick up somebody and say, oh, but okay, fine. But this is how it follows. So it doesn't follow like that, etc. Then turn everything around. So very interestingly, if you look at it, what we call a teacher will be called a cognitive fitness trainer, and the field that he is working in will be called cognitive science. So just like we say physicist or a chemist or a zoologist, botanist, a teacher will be a cognitive scientist who will practice cognitive fitness training or cognitive enhancement of people or whatever, or preventing cognitive decline. Yeah.
Well, we have Neha, who has asked a question saying how new education policy 2020 will be beneficial to self-learning, and what kind of attitudes teachers should adopt after implementation of NEP. Yeah. But I think a majority of things Sir has already answered, but Sir, if you could just elaborate.
No, very interestingly, NEP pays lip service to training. Right in the very opening paragraphs, it says rote learning is not enough. Learning to learn is more important. Very early it says that. But after that, it talks only about teacher and teacher training and class 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., which is completely opposite of that concept. So NEP, the problem with NEP, like the problem with our constitution, is it picks up all the big words from wherever, but it has no intention of implementing anything. Because if it was saying learning to learn is most important, it should say, so we will now close down gradually so many universities, so many engineering colleges, so many this thing, etc., and so on. And the role of teachers will be to encourage people to become self-learners. So whatever, also you remove the barriers to self-learning. And that is what is very important, because there are barriers to, see, one of the, for example, I've already created something on AI for learning English. So there I identified what are the barriers to learning English. The first barrier was lack of teachers. So there aren't enough teachers, and I know because I used to talk about this to somebody, especially in South India, parents are paying 400 rupees a month, 500 rupees a month for English teaching. Well, the teacher is saying fixed set, mixed set, etc. in class. So what do you do? And you can see that. You can see that even in the traditional subjects of, let us take English or maths or this thing, there aren't enough good teachers. Just giving a degree and calling him or her B.Ed, M.Ed doesn't make the person teacher, because just like here we talk about attributes of learners, there is nothing in a program which talks about attributes of teachers. Yeah, so new education policy says nice things about it, but there is nothing in it which actually leads to doing that. That's why it becomes a responsibility of the parents to do that. Because NCERT will create some book on learning to self-learn. They've created some materials which they say is for self-learning and so on.
Ma'am, can I ask?
Yes, please.
Sanjay ji,
Sir, good afternoon.
Very
evening,
good
sir.
afternoon. Very nice to
Sir,
see you.
Same here, sir. It is always a pleasure, as usual, to listen to you. Sir, perhaps one of the, because you have been talking about the role of universities and the teachers in this new time. So, are there specific attribute that one should have to be a self-learner? Like we have students, and as you know, that out of those set of students, 10% of the students are self-learners. They will do whatever they wish to do. Remaining, perhaps another 20% of the students we need to motivate, and then they also join that.
Yeah, so that is the point.
But the remaining part of the student, yes.
So that is why
how do we encourage them?
Yeah, so this is what the discussion is all about. So we have to create a whole movement about becoming self-learners. So that's why, in fact, here I've done 4 sessions instead of just trying to say briefly. And this can become, let's say, like, you know, in many universities, we do an induction program, foundation program, etc. We can design a full 1-month foundation program where we do that. And not only that, we do exercises to get them to become self-learners. Like today, you notice I would have said that was a speech by Martin Luther King. This was something by Rabindranath Tagore. Now you create what you want for future of learning. Gradually, and what has to be done is you have to gradually do that. So in a detailed program, what I would do is people who are not used to reading at all, give them 5 minutes of reading, then 10 minutes of reading, then 15 minutes of reading, and then try to get them themselves overcome the barriers. So for example, if they encounter a word which they've never heard of, ubiquitous. So we say, okay, now you don't understand this, go look for it in the dictionary, go look for it. And that's why I'm saying AI tool, computer tools are so good that they help you in doing that. But you must get that thing in them to be able to do that. And then gradually you start teaching them, you guess what could be the meaning of it from the context. So all the things, see, in fact, you have raised a very interesting. So my interest area here is, and as you know, I was a good student. I was a person who could study effortlessly, studied very well. Even in my BSc, I got 147 out of 151. So what I'm saying is, so what is it that I could do? If I tell others, they can also do it. See, today they don't know. So the point, my interest really at this stage is to get people to learn good learning techniques. Instead of just labeling that he's a topper, he's a this, he's a ranker, he's a this thing. I said, okay, but you have to be motivated. But the point is, but this is never told anywhere. There is no techniques for learning which have been done. And why I'm doing this with brothers, then this will end up in a whole movement. People will find other things and so on and so forth. So now the goal is this, to make an ordinary learner a better learner.
Yes.
And I have no hesitation. See, unfortunately for me, I could never understand ki kya samajh mein nahi aa raha. So why can't you do it? And in my academic career also, I was in IIT where the students were very bright, this, that. So I am now coming to this idea and then using AI as a potential thing. That AI is able to do all this because a human cannot do this. So gadhe se kab tak baat karenge? This is the point. We also engage only with bright students, right? So it is a natural tendency. You want to speak to bright students who will hear you and they take further and so on. You don't want to, but that person needs to be trained, oriented, and with practice. So for example, one of the things that is very important is that with practice, people can, in fact, I have this famous thing that if you can improve by 1% every day, in 1 year, you can be 40 times better. Of course, we can't become 1% better every day, but the idea of continue, and this is what the Japanese call Kemba Kaizen method, that you continuously improve. If you remember, long years ago, Japanese mal was considered very bad. But they started this thing, that continuous improvement. Whatever we are, let us keep on improving. So one of the problems is that our system so far has been based on single exams. So one exam at the end of the year, one exam at this, one exam for recruitment. Now, if instead of that, it went to some continuous assessment, then people would also become continuous learners. So one of the things that I suggested is so one of the things that many people call it the 5-hour rule. So that's why you spend 5 hours a week on learning something which is not directly part of your work. And similarly, in that, if you learn techniques for learning and so on, and many of us learn wrong techniques. So if you look at the work of Barbara Oakley and so on, she says we often have the wrong techniques and it creates the illusion of learning rather than learning. So it says, don't just highlight, etc., and go through that, because once you read the same thing 3 times, it is familiar, so you feel you understand. But he says, no, close the book, ask yourself questions, have some flashcards, quiz, this, that. So drill and practice and so on. So there's now well-known techniques for doing that. And what I'm trying to say is to create a movement to make this happen.
Perhaps at this time, I would like to say that we would like to be part of that moment and movement. And
so that is the idea. So that is the idea of all this thing. Thank you.
There is a question by Preeta Pantvya. She's saying something I heard: humanities students to be allowed to study for technical courses, possibly in the current scenario. And
so there is no. See, the point is, the only reason why humanities people did not study technical courses were they had an inadequate preparation. So they didn't have enough background in physics or maths and so on, and therefore they were not able to do it. But there is absolutely no reason why it should not be there. And in fact, it is a very good idea. So in fact, today, as we said, we are all talking about synergy and breaking the barriers and getting from one to the other. And a lot of things come out of it. So the point is very simple. There is this open growth mindset and closed mindset. So once you have that closed mindset and say that I don't know this and I can never learn it, that becomes a barrier. Because suppose you say, I don't know this. But okay, what the hell? I'll learn it. What is it? What is so great about Pythagoras theorem that I cannot learn it at the age of 25? So once you decide that you can do that, you can do that. So, and there have been many instances. There have been many instances of people. See, mostly what happened was in the past, because of the nature of organization of work and job and opportunities, people wanted the most efficient way of getting into a stream. So IIT, MBA, multinational was the best thing. You didn't have to worry about anything else. But as you are more interested, more curious, you will find that that is there. And I, for one, am a great believer that there cannot be an educator who doesn't have a good thing of both humanities and the sciences. How could you send somebody into a classroom of young children who doesn't know any psychology? Yeah.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for this question. I think we have Mohit, who has been there for quite some time. So Mohit, you can ask a question, and then we have Dr. Aditya, who's also wanting to ask a question.
Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Sir, as the chat went, so the main question here is, with anything decentralized, the hereditary problem comes down to chaos. Like not immediately, but when everything becomes decentralized, say 20 years down the line, there will be chaos about something. Like, for example, in cryptocurrency, we have some degree of chaos still. It is because it is decentralized. So how do we prepare for that when it comes to education, especially education?
No. See, the point is there is the debate between centralized and decentralized is like an oscillating thing. When there is too much centralization, there is pressure for decentralization. When there is so much decentralization that it is anarchy, there is going to be a pressure for centralization. So like a pendulum swinging, operating systems swing between centralized and decentralized. But decentralized things also work quite well. You know, this is called swarm intelligence. So termites, honeybees, locusts, so many things work on swarm intelligence. And lots of people are now working on taking tiny robots and making them work like swarm intelligence. So it's all the matter of design that when you're designing something, you can see that the model that you have and the goals that you have, how much is the mismatch between them. So in an army, for example, you don't want a decentralized system. Soldier cannot independently think whether I will fight or not. So it's a highly centralized system. So top down it happens. When you want innovation, creativity, you cannot have a highly centralized system that person will design what it, because ideas will come into the minds of so many people. So there is movement, and we have no such things as perfect things. I mean, one size fits all, and you have various things. And nature is full of things. I mean, if you look at your nature, galaxies, this, that, the whole thing is mixture of centralized and decentralized.
So one more follow-up question.
Yeah.
So do you believe when the education becomes sufficiently decentralized, will we need a centralized agency like the existence of AICT, for example? Is it?
No. See, you in India, in the constitution, education was a state subject.
Yeah.
And therefore was decentralized. And even teacher training, I know firsthand, for example, that in UP, teachers, before they became teachers, the qualification was called LT, licentiate in teaching. Actually, very early, everything was licentiate. The degrees were not the doctors were called licentiate in medicine, licentiate in surgery, licentiate in medicine and surgery, LMS. There was no degree. See, universities became more powerful with degrees much later. So B.Ed became more powerful than LT. But originally, every state gave a license to practice the profession. So LMS was called licentiate in medicine and surgery. We used to jokingly call licentiate in murder and slaughter. But anyway, the point is that then what happened was, then the universities became very powerful, and universities said, we will give degrees. So instead of LT, they came B.Ed, and then universities degree are sort of nationally recognized. Otherwise, licentiate in teaching would be in a particular state, and then on a reciprocal basis, you would get in another place or whatever. So I am, for one, a believer that eventually teachers should become autonomous. So I have been trying to say for a long time, just like you have doctors who can, see, you take MBBS, you do everything. You can work in a government, you can work in a private, or you can do your own dispensary. You can do that as an engineer. You can work for a corporate sector, you can work for government sector, you can work for government corporation, you could do an independent contractor, you could work for DLF, whatever you want. Only in teacher, in spite of doing your master's and B.Ed and everything, you cannot teach formally unless there is an institution which has been created by government or licensed by government or something. So my imagination of future is independent educators, like independent lawyers, independent doctors, independent architects, because that will drive education. As long as education is all government employees, they are, firstly, according to service rules, they cannot do anything against it. FR, SR, वो सब होता है. So and they will flourish more. See, you look at people like Jetmalani, Harish Salve, all these people, they will be great educators who will be known all over, and they will help in, as I was saying, solving the cognitive problems of individuals, people, groups, masses, whatever. This is a pure artifact. So in the constitution, it was like that. What happened around the 1970s? Bengal was going a little berserk. Bengal was very leftist oriented, and their local thing was becoming. Then they created by amendment, they said this can become a concurrent subject. So there will be state, there will be center, but the regulating agencies will be central agencies. So you have state universities, you have central universities, and you have AICT, UGC, etc., which are regulating agencies. They were started with regulating for standards, and then they kept on increasing their thing to more and more thing.
Thank you, Mohit.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
I would request Dr. Anjanri to also give us a little bit of, information, little bit of add-on to the existing discussion that we are having. Dr. A.
Thank you, Dr. Rima. This is a very, very interesting discussion. And I didn't want to go, to add too many layers to what Dr. Pant has already said. But I thought that the piece about compartmentalization of knowledge was very important. I've been brought up in this belief that it is the narrowness of the human mind that we divide up knowledge into all these separate disciplines, into this science, that science, humanities, this, that, and the other, when the degree that is being given to all scholars is a PhD. It's not a doctorate in a subject, it's a doctorate in philosophy. So if we embrace the view that all knowledge is valuable and everyone's knowledge has value, and if we are willing to keep the possibilities open for accepting knowledge from wherever we find it, and then applying reason to whatever information we receive. So information plus reason plus application becomes knowledge. There are examples, for instance, in Saharanpur, down the road, there is a little company, not that little, it's a few hundred crores, that has been making veterinary medicine using a Vedic technique called a Patal Yantra. And as a scientist, we started looking at, can you mimic that by some modern technique to do it much faster, but get the same chemical or medicinal product? And it turns out you can. So as knowledge accumulates, I think we can stop saying that ancient knowledge is better than modern knowledge, or modern knowledge is not as good as ancient knowledge, or modern knowledge is very good and ancient knowledge isn't relevant. And for all learners, just as with the 7 habits of highly effective people that were talked about, I simply take it back to habit number 4. If we are training people to think win-win, instead of saying, what do I gain? If we look at what does the ecosystem gain, I think we will create much more effective human beings and much more effective learners. I will leave it at that for now.
Yeah, so thank you. I must add to this because I often tell people that everything begins with philosophy. As humans, we want to have answers to the basic questions. And that's why we all get PhDs, and philosophy is the main pursuit. What happened was that philosophy then got branched out. And I basically kind of talk about revealed knowledge and acquired knowledge. And what I said is the religious stream talks about revealed knowledge, that somebody knows everything and he will tell you, etc., and that becomes the branch of religious philosophy or whatever you want to call it. The other branch was that don't, like self-learning, don't tell me the answer, I will figure out. And this is what led to science. Now what happened was the branching happened because at that time there was not enough information processing devices. So you say, you look at this part and think of just this, and you look at that part. So especially in physics and chemistry, it is very interesting. There are so many Nobel laureates who've got award in physics or chemistry when we see their work as belonging to the other field. So physics is the field, but there are people who've got PhD in chemistry for something. And then, of course, Marie Curie got it for both physics and chemistry. So therefore, this is absolutely true. And in fact, what happened is in our education system, the seriousness to educate people was not there. I mean, this is my belief. For example, you have an IB program, International Baccalaureate. They have a paper which everybody has to study called Theory of Knowledge. And theory of knowledge is exactly about what he was saying, how knowledge is organized. What are the different fields of knowledge? What are the different methods of getting knowledge? Sometimes you also get a knowledge because my mother told me so. So I have no other evidence for that, but that is valid knowledge. So they talk about that kind of thing. And in every subject, you have to relate to that. So you learn physics, you will learn physics as in 10+2, but you will also, what is the relation between physics and theory of knowledge? Chemistry and theory of knowledge. And theory of knowledge is a word they coined because what they were really talking about was epistemology. And the idea was that if you are talking as being an educated person, you must know what are the various ways of knowledge, how is knowledge acquired, and then you can specialize in one area and say that I know most about this, but then I know about other things also. Recently, there is a book called Range by Epstein, which actually emphasizes this. This is narrow specialization is not a good idea. You must know about many things. Some people call it a T-shaped model, etc. So my belief is that pre-technology age, when information was started growing fast, the only way was to say, focus on a limited amount of information rather than everything. But otherwise, of course, it is all. And There is now programs called Philosophy for Young People, etc. And it's very interesting because many of these things come up. So what happened was that in our rush for utilitarianism of preparing useful people, we moved to this, make him an engineer very quickly. So, for example, take the law degree. Until not too long ago, to do the law degree, you first had to do a BA degree. Law was not the first degree you got. So you did a BA, BSc, BCom, whatever. In fact, I did my law degree after doing my PhD and postdoctoral and so on. But then Madhav Menon and some of his people said, no, very early in life, he must decide he wants to be a lawyer and nothing else. At 10+2 itself, he must decide. And they created a national law school, a bunch of national law schools, etc. So that was the thinking. But today's thinking is now that you have a lot more tools of knowledge, you have a lot more resources of knowledge, you should be able to learn a lot more. This book by Range, on Range by Epstein, is very good because it actually says that early specialization harms you in the long run. Anyway, thank you, Doctor, for a very good comment.
Yes, Dr. Ray, please. It will be wonderful to hear from you again. Please.
I really like the reference to epistemology. So here's an interesting difference between Western and Indian thought that I would then bring back for the consideration of Professor Pant. That if I look at, let's say, Karl Popper's line of thinking or Arthur Koestler's line of thinking, where we talk about the Viennese school of logical positivism. So a large number of proofs makes a theory versus Karl Popper saying you need one falsification to disprove a theory. So for example, when you, right? But on the other hand, the Indian school of thought is Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara. That if you learn from the Guru, you take the Guru's teachings as something that you imbibe. So this is a fundamental difference between the Indian style of thought and the Western style of thought, because the Indian line of philosophy came through the rishis and sages who had many centuries of accumulated oral wisdom. Whereas the Western line of thought is mostly through maybe 1,000 odd years or a few thousand odd years at most of written records. So today, when we are reconciling these two systems, I think it is good to keep our learners' eyes open to the possibilities of both and synthesize them to what works best for each of them, rather than prescribing one or the other.
Yeah, in fact, the point is this idea of conquest, who wins, is not the idea to approach for knowledge. So in fact, one of the things which I say very often in my talk these days, to try to talk between the differences. So I say, approximately the distance of the Earth to the Sun is 93 million miles. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. How much time does light take to come from the surface of the Earth to the surface of the Sun to the surface of the Earth? And I'm deliberately using surface of the Sun because it takes a lot of time from the interior of the Sun to go to the surface of the Sun. But anyway, the operative story is that, so 93 million divided by 186,000, you get 500 seconds, and therefore you get 8 minutes, 20 seconds. Very good. Some people remember this from the school. And then I say, now use the Roman system to do the same calculation. You can't do it because in Roman, there is no concept of zero. There is no concept of division. And you will have to subtract 500 times if you have the patience with Roman arithmetic to get the answer. That is why Aryabhat was 1500 years ahead of Kepler in this thing. And I read this of all places in a book by a Harvard professor on history of ideas, where he said in AD 499, Aryabhat had done this and Kepler talked about his elliptic orbits, etc. 15 years later. So it is absolutely undebated, and the Western world accepts it, that we were way ahead. But what has happened is that in the meantime, we slept. And therefore, in modern science, we have slipped behind because we did not continue to make progress. It is not only us, the Greeks also had the same problem. If you look at much of the early discoveries, they were all by the Greeks. But where is Greece today? It is slept. So it is, I think the point is that at various points of time, different groups were thought leaders. And when you look at philosophy, core philosophy, sometimes the German philosopher Kant is there, sometimes Descartes is there, sometimes this is there. So people have been doing that. So pursuit of knowledge is a human endeavor of all kinds, and we should look at what we are learning rather than fight about who did it earlier, who did it better, and so on and so forth. But thank you, Doctor, for very, very useful remarks.
That was wonderful. I mean, two IITians just made it an amazing discussion today. Dr. Ray, thank you so much. It was wonderful. And of course, Professor Pant, who is mentoring the entire idea, essence of TechnoHub comes because of this infusion of self-learning and 21st century learning, which I think is doing good because we are kind of learning or looking at different dimensions, including that I was thinking I'm too primitive to do something like meddling up with computers, but I see I am able to do it, so it's giving me like a good feeling at the end of it. So that's nice. Yeah, so okay, Adhikari ji I think has a question to ask, so before we end.
Yeah,
thank you, madam. First of all, it has been a wonderful conversation, and I thank Dr. Ray for his point of view, and also Professor Jasula for his remarks. I come from applied side of the sciences, which we call technology. And what I have seen last 20 years, there have been solutions and solutions and solutions. Everybody is selling solutions. Everybody is developing solutions. And now we said industry problem is a lot of manual work, therefore automation. And then we said RPA. And then now this AI ML has come into play. So will it be apt to say, Dr. Panji, we need people now in the new scheme of things who can understand problems, who can define a problem, who can articulate a problem so that an AI or another component, he can understand it, and then solution elements are already there, and it can direct to the system to choose right element, and the solution is already there.
Yeah. So as in fact, Dr. Anjan Ray was talking about the same thing. The most important thing is to define the problem. Actually, finding solutions is much more easier. The point is, how do you define a problem, formulate a problem, find out the relevant aspects of a problem, and so on and so forth. And this will become more and more important, because very often we, and if you get into this thing, people will see that you actually are talking of non-problems. And one of the most caustic person in this field, because I come from physics, was Wolfgang Pauli. So when people will go to him with something, it is not even wrong. What he meant is that you have not even formulated the problem correctly. When you have formulated the problem correctly, then there can be a right answer or a wrong answer. And he had this very caustic remark saying it's not even wrong. And much of this, and that's why this issue from philosophy starts coming in, and first principles and whatever, that have you formulated the question properly? And have you collected all information? And you are absolutely right. We are all talking of problem solving as the first thing. Then there are various tools and techniques. So the way you will solve it with a computer is a different thing. The way you'll solve it in one programming language is a different thing. The way you ask a human being is a different thing, and so on and so forth. And I'm not complicating it by saying the way you ask a quantum computer will be a different thing.
Okay, this was interesting. Actually, it seems as if we will be looking for the new job coming up now will be of problem creators rather than problem solvers, because problem solvers will become the computers.
So problem interpreters. See, interpreter. See, what is the problem? That is defining it in a certain way. Just like we say, we make a sentence which is grammatically correct. You define a problem which is appropriate and has the features of a problem. Otherwise, it is not even a problem. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that was interesting. I think there is one more question which needs to be answered, sir, because this is very interesting, because there's someone who wants to contribute into this. So this is Bipin asking, are there any initiatives happening in a country in this direction, and how can I contribute?
Oh, start doing it. That's very simple. I mean, I see no big thing. You don't have to make a national mission. Just like we have this group, we started doing it. You say what you want to do it, share with people, share a approach to it, anything. Suppose you're saying formulating a problem, I've created something. See, today the advantage is that everybody is a broadcaster. You can write a blog, you can create a YouTube video, you can do a podcast, you can do everything. And as people respond to it, and you can post it on your communities, and then the people in your communities can post on other communities. If enough people like it, it becomes a medium of interest.
Right. I think this has been quite interesting with many aspects coming in. But I would also, ask Professor Jasola, who had very interesting discussion earlier, if he has something more to add to this, it will be wonderful. Professor Jasola, if you're there.
Yes, Dr. Pant, I'm there, and
Everybody's listening.
yeah, and
good evening, sir.
Yes. Yes,
Sir, this is Geeta Pant.
Yes.
Actually, according to a prior discussion, sir, regarding, I'm a teacher, licentiated teacher in government of Uttarakhand. The thing is that hum kehte hain ki I'm a good scholar, I was a good student. Yes, I have such type of score, I have qualified this thing, but I have got 10 years. Hello? I have got 10 years of experience in teaching, sir.
Teaching what?
Yeah, teaching
at school. What?
Teaching at school. I am a teacher, licentiated teacher at government school, sir. Actually, I'm teaching since 10 years. And the students which are coming, the students who are coming in our school are very much poor families. And I'm giving, if I'm not saying 100%, I'm giving 90% of my efforts to them. So that everyone, I must reach to the last mental level student of my class. But actually, is that I'm getting result. I'm up to the satisfaction. I'm getting results from 40 students. I'm getting the result of only 5 students. But I'm putting efforts wholeheartedly, sir. Because they are coming to school only for 5 hours and they belong to a very poor family. The thing is that I'm putting my wholehearted efforts from various methods I have applied. But the thing is that now this NEP has been introduced. I have completed 3-4 modules introduced by NCRT. And I'm just completed before coming to this meeting. I have completed 1 or 2 modules given by NEP and other things. That whatever we are teaching to them, why the level has not been increased, what we have to do. Though as far as these lectures are concerned, when I used to give my online teaching or lecture to them, I used to put 2 or 3 relevant videos to them. Related videos. Even then they don't want to learn what we have to do, because the thing is, the problem arises, the things we are discussing, the academics at higher levels is a very up high level things. But as far as grassroots is concerned, the poor people concern is there. They are not getting what we want to teach them. What will work that level, sir?
See, I unfortunately cannot help much in that, because I have no experience of the real rural background and the real state of things. I have unfortunately taught only in very good institutions, high-level institutions, bright students, etc. So it is very difficult for me to say anything, but I'm sure other people might have more to say.
Because the thing is, sir, I want to, the things which are teaching, our children used to get from Montessori schools, the way that things have been introduced, the 3, 4, 5 books, they learn, the way that those people will learn. If we introduce those things to them at Montessori level, we'll be capable to do the things.
Ma'am, I think, sir, sorry, I'm just intervening since you spoke.
No, I said that I won't be able to respond adequately to this.
No. I just meant that, you see, it's definitely understandable that when you are trying to deal with children who are coming from, and with the kind of platform that already Professor Pant has spoken, that we have a platform where there is a centralized agency and a state agency which is, holding the standards, and the standards are always set up with people in focus who have access to certain level of understanding in education. It does become a huge challenge to teach children who have not been exposed to any sort of academic learning which is happening through the syllabus. But what I feel, ma'am, is that if we give them, I don't know, I would be really happy that if we can connect sometime and then be there together and then see what is there on ground. But if we can give them some alternative ways to learn by doing the same things that you're trying to teach from the book, maybe that might be helpful, and that may take a longer time for them to learn what we are trying to teach them, but definitely will be something which will stay with them for a longer time.
Actually, the thing is that I want to continue, ma'am, because we put a number of efforts. You have shown them with the TLM, many things. I have given them many ways to do the thing. But the thing is that for the 5 hours, they are coming for the 5 hours, they are coming to school, and rest of the time they spend at their home. And what they are doing, we don't know about that. But at school level, up to the remark, because nobody is there at their home to help them to study or teach them. Nobody is there. What we have to do at that time, because it's a challenging problem, because everything it is discussed on the tables where too many educated people are sitting. It's very easy, but if you go to the grassroots level, it's very difficult. Because I want to the question was arising in my mind. That's why I asked that question, ma'am.
No, that's a wonderful question, ma'am. But I think we can really have a nice, good singular session on how to tackle or how to take up children here, because we could maybe plan out where we can actually sit and decide on what activities they can be given for home tasks, which can relate to their daily lifestyle and the education that you're giving them, be it sciences, be it languages, but just connect to what they are doing when they go back home. Maybe the girl is going back and picking up wood from the forest while she's going, or sweeping somebody's house, or cleaning up utensils, or maybe just sitting at home and watching TV. But maybe we can think of designing some solutions for them where they try and extract knowledge, even though unknowingly, and our motives achieved. It may not be immediately like we have 10 on 10 coming, but yes, we might have 1 on 10, but definitely I am hopeful that there might be success in doing so.
Because we are in a noble profession, because we are giving everything to our children, but we have to think about those children who are coming from a very poor and weaker section of the society now.
Rimaji, I think we can work with Adhikari if sometimes.
I think we can work with you. That's exactly what I said, Adhikari. I think we can work with her and we can have an entire session on this. So, yes.
Because we may be working so much on the solution rather without even knowing the problem.
Exactly. So I think, sir, it has been a really, really wonderful and invigorating session.
Okay.
And yes, sir, you are saying something?
No. I have said it's been a long session as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a long and a very exciting session where we've had people talking at different forum and giving, their point of views on it. With this, I think even Siddharth today is kind of on the move, so it's slightly difficult for him. So I would like to thank everybody who's been here for the evening, and hope that we will see all of you back again on the next Saturday with another session, exciting session on this journey of self-learning with Professor Pant. And till then, I would wish you health and safety as you stay at your homes, and